Producer J.R. Jackson loves to joke about how Arsenio Hall should stop having his format of his show be a la way back when, 1989, and sort of get with the times. Now, he had Dana White on the show. Shots fired. He had Dana White on the show, and he asked, what if Floyd Mayweather were competing in the UFC? It seems like this is always going to be the case with a rivalry between boxing and MMA. Arsenio Hall asked it. Here was Dana White's response via Yahoo Sports. He'd get murdered. He'd get murdered in the UFC. Here's the thing. These guys always talk about this crossover stuff, and Floyd's going to go crazy because I said that too now. But the bottom line is the disrespect these guys show for each other's sports. Stopping right there, Dana White is hitting the fucking nail on the head. There's this great rivalry between the two when there doesn't need to be a rivalry at all. Not whatsoever does there need to be a rivalry. And we come up with these what-if scenarios. Oh, the guy that goes to MMA and he goes to boxing and da-da-da. It's somewhat apples to oranges. I'll get into my take in a moment. Dana White continuing. My guys thinking they could go over and box, and Floyd thinking he could come over here in the UFC. It's like you go to a knife fight with a guy and the other guy has got guns and chains and crowbars. There's so many more weapons in the UFC than there are in boxing. So it makes no sense. So the boxing versus MMA rivalry, they sort of dispelled it. Not really. At UFC 168, if you remember, in Boston, Massachusetts, Randy Couture defeated James Toney. Granted, Toney was somewhat in the limelight of his career. And now there's this rumor, or at least there has been talks going on throughout the years, that Roy Jones Jr., who is one of the best boxers of all time, not sure I would, you know what, you guys can discuss. Another clip for another day. Could he possibly fight Anderson Silva? They've been talking about it for years upon years upon years. Is it something you would want to see as Anderson Silva is recovering from a horrific injury and Roy Jones Jr. is way past his prime? He's way past his prime that he's now in the corner helping Jean Pascal defeat Lucian Bute on Showbox. Also, Dana White, when he was asked about Vince McMahon and the WWE, he called the WWE, quote, a soap opera. So here's my personal take on all this. If you give Floyd time to prepare for MMA, will he be a better MMA fighter? No. He'll learn some of the techniques. Anyone can learn the techniques as long as they're a phenomenal athlete and they put their best foot forward in striving to be the best in what they do. Floyd can become an okay MMA fighter. I'm not sure that he could defeat the top welterweights in the UFC, just as much as I don't think Georges St. Pierre can go and compete in boxing. The only way that Floyd would win is if he absolutely stays on the outside, counters guys like crazy, and refuses to get hit. Here's the one thing that I've noticed in the UFC fights and MMA fights that I've seen respectively. A lot of those fighters don't take punches well on the chin. So my question is, if Floyd counters one of them and knocks them on their ass, granted, he probably would not know how to finish them. He would just wait for them to get up on wobbly legs and then just start attacking them. The big question is, and I mean, Mike can also chime in if he wants to and agree or disagree. No? Okay, cool. Glad we got that out of the way. My other question is, if Floyd were to get grappled and if he were to go down on the ground, what would happen? He would not survive, in my opinion, because he's just not used to it. We talk about Bo Jackson being a phenomenal athlete, and then we mentioned Michael Jordan, how he sort of went from basketball to baseball. He was bad. He wasn't terrible. He wasn't great. So now I turn to you, the viewers. Do you think Floyd Mayweather can possibly compete in MMA? Can an MMA fighter go and upset Floyd Mayweather in boxing? Leave a thought in the comments section below. And also do me a favor, subscribe to TYT Sports. Click right here. It's free.